We are amazing because our passion is limitless and our drive is intense. Therefore, you will not deny our grind. You are now listening to the Faith, Grind, and Inspire podcast.
Welcome back to another great episode of Faith, Grind, Inspire. I am your host, Gene Alert.
And this is your co-host, Jeffrey Patrick.
What's going on? And today we have a very special guest, one of my good friends, Jatali.
Hold on, but Gene, before we get started, I just want to let everyone know, because people have been saying to me, Jeff, we hear the podcast and we love the podcast, but it's not in the basement. We're not in the basement, okay? Because people think we're in the basement. We're at Madison Square Garden, heart of the city, home of the Knickerbockers, and we're making things happen. Okay? Let it be known. Let's lead with it and let people know we're in the studio live at Madison Square Garden. Okay?
Very true.
All right, let's do it.
All right, yeah, you're right. It's like, I'm trying to be humble out here. A lot of podcasts, they do it from their phones and tablets.
No, we're in the new studio, too. We're in the new studio, so.
We're going up there. The numbers are getting better.
Yeah.
And the view is beautiful, I must say.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we have a very special guest, Miss Jatali.
Yes.
Miss Jatali.
Yes.
Hi.
So from KidsWhoBank. So this podcast is all about the mindset of entrepreneurs and how you got here, what keeps you going, and just some tips on, we just want to know your story.
I've been dying to talk to you because I want to know, how should I think about money in this day and age? How should I think about money?
If you're not investing, then you're wasting your time. That's how you should think about money, if you ask me. That's number one.
Yeah, yes. Right? You should be investing.
Because if you save your money, to give you an example, I had a client came to me. I do real estate investing as an investor, and he came to me. He's like, Jay, you flip so many properties. Can you find me a property in this neighborhood? And he finally retired, and he was retiring with $1.1 million, and he thought he was saying something.
Yeah.
But he had this dream for 20 years of this neighborhood that he wanted to live in. 20 years ago, the properties were at $300,000 and change. And then when I went to go look in that same neighborhood where he took pictures that he had this vision board of where he was going to live, the properties were now worth $900,000 plus. So if he was to really retire and buy the house in this dream neighborhood that he wanted to live in, he would basically have to work, because $100,000 is not enough to last until you pass away.
Where are you going with that?
The price of living is going up.
Yeah.
You need to invest.
Inflation is going to...
Yeah. Everything. Cost of milk is $5. You know what I mean? So cost of living is expensive. So often in our communities of color, I feel like you see people who, they feel like because they're saving and they're putting money in a 401k, that's enough. But they're not investing their money. And they're like, oh, the bank is giving me 2% on my money. That is literally like nothing. So 2%, 401ks, that's really not enough. So that's the first thing I would say to a person who wants to become a millionaire is invest your money wisely.
Okay, so what are we trying to accomplish with our money when we invest it? What are we trying to do?
Multiply.
Duh.
I mean, not to be cheeky, but seriously, if you think about it, it's about investing wisely and creating a legacy for your children, generational wealth, right? And part of that generational wealth is knowing that if your children came out lazy, which the goal is not to have them be lazy, but if they decided they wanted to basically not lift a penny, that hopefully you were able to create enough of a base for them that they can kind of just sit back and do minimal work for their own corporation or their own family legacy and still be millionaires, right? As well, the second goal is to, pay closer to 0% in taxes legally, right? So, oftentimes people have jokes on Trump and people like that because he's done bankruptcy 7 million times, and he's, he paid 0% taxes sometimes, or companies like Apple, or was it? I think Apple recently.
Amazon.
It was Amazon?
Yeah.
Amazon paid 0% in taxes.
Zero.
And people are like, how did that happen? But guess what? Amazon created jobs. They created opportunities for communities, various communities. The list continues. And that's kind of the perp of knowing the government that we live in the United States, is that if you do what you're supposed to do properly, then you pay little to no taxes. So even in real estate right now, until December 2019, Trump has this thing where you can pay 0% on capital gains if you invest in opportunity zones, which means it doesn't matter if it's in New York, Brooklyn, like Red Hook has a lot of opportunity zones, or if you're going to Detroit, Michigan, if you invest in properties, instead of deferring for 1 to 3 years or having to hold on to a property for 10 years to pay 0% in taxes, you literally can do that and hold it for however long you want to and pay 0% in taxes and keep all of your capital gains. So the rich people know this, and the rich tend to be in this country, other demographics. It's not usually people of color, right? It's usually seen as the Germans, the Russians, the Jewish, etc., right? So now it's about time for us to be a part of this party.
I just saw something here. You mentioned Amazon. It said in 2015, Amazon sold $55 billion worth of retail goods nationwide, all the while avoiding $704 million in taxes.
Do you see what? Do you see what I'm talking about? Yeah. So, and we have these capabilities. We just don't know how to do it. Not some of us, but those of us who do know about these things, I feel like it's important for us to talk about it, right?
When it comes to investing and making money, the problem I see is we are our own worst enemy, because we don't study what we're supposed to. We don't really pay attention, and then we slack off. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. When you ask someone the question, what is your money supposed to do when you invest it? You got to really think, okay, what is it that I'm doing here? Right? What is it?
One of the things I will say to add to that, I think when you talk about us being our worst enemies, it's also the mind frame of feeling like you need $1 million to invest. I know people who have invested in penny stocks that have made six figures. I've known people I've personally purchased real estate for as little as $500 that I then flipped and sold for $10,000. Wow. And the property was worth $50,000 and I sold it for $10,000 because I had no interest in trying to rehab it or fix it or wasting more money in it. And, somebody was like, oh, but it was worth $50,000. And I was like, that mind frame right there is what gets you in trouble sometimes, because what could have been a quick flip now becomes a liability. Right? And it's no longer an asset, because guess what? I made $9,500 profit and I not even lift the one finger. I opened the door, smelled mold, and I was like, I don't feel like going into that place. And I closed the door and sold it as is, and that's a mind frame. That was over here in Maryland.
Oh, that's in Maryland. Okay.
And Maryland is not too far from New York. That means that if you do decide to keep it and fix it, it's not that far of a drive. But opportunities like that are happening everywhere. I've seen opportunities like that in New York, New Jersey. I've seen it I've seen it in, of course, Michigan. It's all around the U.S. I've seen it happen in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Yeah. It's all around the U.S. Right. It can happen basically anywhere. You just have to go to the auctions or know where to look.
Right.
Now, we're talking a lot about business, but my audience still doesn't know who you are.
Who I am.
So tell us where you're from.
Okay.
And who is Jatali?
So my name is Jatali Bellanton. I am the founder of an organization called KidsWhoBank. We teach youth financial literacy in the school systems. Right. I worked 13 and a half years in corporate UK and corporate America's finance world. Yep. So I did investment banking. I had my Series 7 and all that beautiful jazz. And then I also did 4.5 years forensic accounting. And I worked for major firms like Marc Jacobs and Gucci and Louis Vuitton, companies like that, where I just helped them make sure if the government was going to audit them, that they were all papers were, aligned.
In line.
So with that, I, after working so many years making all these other people rich or maintaining their money, I just wanted to do something giving back to my community, which came KidsWhoBank.
You look rich.
Thank you. That's good. And I have no designer labels on, as far as I could, you can't tell if I do have on something designer, and, I'm very low key. So I appreciate that.
No, definitely.
But, for me, when I started going to schools, within the last 3 years, basically, we were able to create a finance curriculum. I wrote a book. It's called Wants versus Needs, which you guys can see. I don't know if they can see it. So the book was my first book that I wrote, and I released the book. Gene was there when I first said I was going to write the book.
Yes.
And I reached out to him. I was like, I want to write a financial literacy book. And he was like, well, sis, if you think you want to do that and tackle that, I think you got this. And I was like, I reached out to him and one of my friend Chris Classic and a few people that I knew were motivators. Shout out to Chris. I told Chris, I was like, yo, part of this book being written was you as a friend pushing and saying, Jatali, we need a disruptor. Right. And then this book turned into something where in 2 months I created a curriculum, and then the finance curriculum the first year went into 137 schools nationwide. And then as of last Thursday, we just finished 215 schools nationwide with our finance curriculum, which I don't even know if Gene knows this. But yeah, so I've just been like, we have 15 teachers, all people of color who have worked in either the finance world or have their PhDs and are professors in college that have been willing to work with me and going to the schools and teach our kids financial literacy.
Nice.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Thank
you know
you.
what? Yeah, definitely,
Thank you.
definitely. When I think about kids and money, and I think about, there's a thing called muscle memory. Right, and you're so money memory, right?
Yes.
I remember the first time I came across the idea that money was important, right? And it was as a kid. I was 12 years old. My uncle Delroy, may he rest in peace, right? He gave me $20, right? At 12 years old, $20.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. So, back in the days, I was, you got the tight shorts. I put the $20 in the waistband of my shorts, and I was riding my bicycle around. And there's this pizza shop, Nick's Pizza Shop by where I live. And I was going to go get a slice of pizza. Right? And when I got there, I ordered the pizza. The man brought the pizza, and I went down in my shorts to get the money.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then I cried. I was riding.
Money was gone. That was it.
And I went home, and I laid in the bed that day. And I was like, you know what, man? I got to have some money. Right?
Yeah, it's a mind frame that needs to start from young.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what really got me even to write the book Wants versus Needs First was that I noticed that in the corporate world, I was working with people who were millionaires, multimillionaires, and they were living check to check. I had this one particular boss who he would literally every week be like, did we pay everybody? Do I have enough money to go do X, Y, and Z? Like he was living check to check. And in between the boats and all these other lavish things that sometimes we choose to live in, these mansions, etc., and we're not budgeting. We don't know the difference between want and need. And then it trickles down to the children. So although now we also start to do adults, because we also went into 15 colleges this year, including like Xavier College in New Orleans and HBCUs going around the U.S. And this year we're going into Howard, which is exciting. HU. So,
nice.
So as we're doing these things, I realized that we have to teach the adults so that they can continue teaching the children, and we have to teach the youth because it becomes muscle memory, as you called it, money memory, right?
Money memory, yeah.
And
money memory.
That money memory, it's no joke, because even like my son, from he was 2, he likes Hot Wheels cars. They're $1,
right?
And every time we go to the supermarket, he would see that row and he'd want to buy them.
Yeah.
So his dad and I, we would tag team and we'd be like, okay, listen, every night you have to clean up your Hot Wheels cars. Your toys that you already own, you have to clean them up. When you clean them up, you earn a quarter. And then as a parent, it was our job to make sure that if we got to the supermarket and there were like 1 or 2 days that week that he didn't clean up his toys, he didn't have enough money to buy a Hot Wheel car and we couldn't fold. By the second time that happened to him where he didn't earn the money to buy his toy and he couldn't buy his toy, although he was a little bit upset about it, it forced him to learn responsibility of how to manage his money and earn his quota so he could buy his car at the end of the week. And guess what? Now it's 2 years later, he cleans up his toys without even us asking him most of the time, right? And
I like that.
And it starts from so young. And so some people think, oh, how can you teach a 2-year-old about financial literacy? That's financial literacy. Budgeting, earning your money, knowing the difference between a want and a need. You want the quota, you want the car. Guess what? Then you need to clean up your toys, right? So it's just changing the fundamentals of who we are as a people, because when you look at like the Jewish culture, they start teaching their children in the school systems at 9 years old financial literacy. I mean, our program went into 21 schools, yeshiva, Jewish temple schools. And, it's funny because what I teach the high school students, when I showed them the curriculum, they were like, don't teach our 9-year-olds what you teach the 9-year-olds in the public schools. Teach our 9-year-olds what you teach to high school students.
Really?
And I was like, are you sure? Because this is a little bit advanced. But by the time I walk into that room and I'm mentioning depreciation or APRs and compound interest, they already know all the definitions. All they really need are the tools to learn how to implement them better. So I realized that our kids are starting at a deficit, most of them, because when I go into the public schools, sometimes these kids don't even know how to spell the word owner, right? and we're writing business plans and they don't know how to write the word business. And it's things of that nature. But these kids are sometimes 13, 14 years old. So why is it that our 14-year-olds aren't able to even read at a certain level? Where's the money and the funding going, right? And who manages that funding? So it's just time to disrupt. Yeah.
Market disruptor. That was our episode last week.
Yes. That's what it's about.
Yes, exactly.
Growing up, my dad used to, for budgeting, he started with white envelopes. And he'll give me, I'll do chores. He'll say, okay, your allowance is $100, and you would break down this $100. So it would be fives, singles, tens, 20, 120, and he'll say, okay, on the envelopes, what's important for you? So I would say candy, food, clothes, toys, and so each envelope had a budget. And if I ran, he said, if you run out of money out of that envelope that you put in, that's it. But one of the envelopes, the fifth envelope, was saving.
Awesome.
So you had a choice. So at the end of the week, if there was still money in any of the envelopes besides the savings one, I had a choice. I could either leave it in there for the following week, or I could put it into the savings.
Beautiful.
So of course, I put it in the savings. And I kept doing this until, I actually had a bank account. But
beautiful.
I remember when I got my car at 16, I was doing that. So I had an envelope, and it said gas.
Awesome.
So me and my friends used to go out, and my girlfriends at the time, and I would say, I can't go out because I don't have gas more. I don't have any more gas money in the envelope. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I'm saying, I didn't budget. There's no, unless you guys are putting in, I'm not going anywhere this weekend, so it's important to budget.
And you know what's even better? So now when I go into the school systems, I give the kids apps and tools that they can utilize to do these fundamentals with our modern day society.
Technology, right?
So there's an app called Good Budget.
Yes.
And Good Budget allows you to do the envelope method, but digitally. So it automatically links with your bank account, and you can still do the whole different envelopes and everything of that
Grown-ups
nature.
need that.
So
need that.
I suggest Good Budget.
Good budget.
Yeah. So so when I do trainings with adults or parents, we will suggest different apps and things that you should look at, and that's one of them.
Okay. Ja.
Yes.
What exactly does your curriculum look like? What is it? What does it entail?
So we do everything from an investing 101 class where we teach the kids stocks, and especially in the school systems, the average school, especially if they pay for the curriculum, what we do is the kids get to purchase their first stock. So we use Give a Share, which is this website that allows you to gift shares to anyone, even if they're not your child. And then that person's name and only that person can basically, sell that share if they wanted to. So we'll do that with the kids. We do a business plan 101 class. We teach them how to write business plans, and we do our own mini kids Shark Tank. And you've heard of a science fair. So we do a business plan fair. So instead of a science fair, we do business plans, and they get to display it and win something. Sometimes an incentive like a Target gift card for $20 or something. Which, believe it or not, these kids will be very competitive for that.
Absolutely.
We do a wants versus needs class. We talk about, everything from, I was mentioning earlier, APR and compound interest. For the high school students going into college, we explain, and even the college students, we remind them how does APRs work, right? Because you get a credit card for $5,000 and you bought a car for $4,500, not realizing if your APR is 24.4%, which is high because you didn't build your credit yet, then guess what? By the time you're done making minimum payments, you almost spent $10,000 for a car that was only worth $4,000 and change, right? So we teach them that. How does that work?
Nice.
And then we also, even taking it further, we teach 13-year-olds, how do you start building your credit at the age of 13? And then afterwards, we'll do trainings with their parents. If we are able to schedule it, we do family engagement days where we do the same thing. So we're all over, just all broad financial literacy. We teach youth how to invest in real estate. In fact, if you go to KidsWhoBank.com/programs, it shows you our module. And it shows you exactly when you, let's say if you're a principal or a superintendent, it shows you exactly what the curriculum breakdown is. And then, we even do financial affirmations.
What if you're a parent wanting to
So the parents, two things. Outside of the schools, sometimes the schools don't have the time to do like a family engagement session. So outside of the schools, we have routinely throughout the year, we have our own panels where we have influencers like yourselves come out and talk to the youth. Jean was on our second panel ever, which we were blessed to have Shaka Pilgrim, and we had some amazing Essence, and we had some amazing
young entrepreneur.
Young entrepreneur.
That was at, Brooklyn Swirl.
Yeah, so we did that at Brooklyn Swirl. And, it was a blessing to also have regular parents come out. So now it's grown to a community where we have on average 60 to 70 adults who come out. And they get to pick the brains of legends like yourselves who are knowledgeable in your fields and basically learn how to progress themselves to the next level. And then we also do in the summertime like adult camp and the adult financial literacy camp. When we do that, we teach them everything from how do you find financial auctions and real estate auctions, how do you invest in stocks better, how do you flip properties, how do you just fundamentals, how do you fix your credit, right? Because most people are in debt. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, by the time we're teaching sophomores in colleges, by sophomore year, most of the kids we've taught so far are already in debt because the first freshman year, the minute they get to campus, there's a pretty girl or a handsome man with a t-shirt and a credit card. And here's $2,000 credit card. And you think it's just that simple, right? So it's basically just rewiring that for the parents. So they reach out to us, and we sometimes even have like special like weeks where we'll do that throughout the year.
Why do colleges permit that?
Because it's an institution. It's a business. Exactly.
It's a business.
And they get paid a lot of money. And sometimes they pay these corporations to come on the campus to pitch to their kids because they're like, oh, we're creating opportunities, right? And the thing is, it's not bad that they allow the people to be there. It's bad that there isn't enough training to make sure that our kids understand how to properly utilize a credit card. And, I always say, don't blame the institution, blame the parents and the children themselves, because we are supposed to make sure we know this knowledge and know how to manage our own finances. Right? It's like when someone goes broke, like you look at Bernie Madoff in that situation and all these millionaires who got robbed by him. And then somebody be like, well, why didn't you know he was robbing you? Right? Why weren't you able to look at your finances and make enough sense to see that something is not adding up here? Right? Or at least have a second, like a forensic accountant to come in and look over your statements every so often. But a lot of people were, unfortunately swindled by him. So I think it's our job to make sure our children have this information. And these colleges are providing. So you parents, lobby. Lobby. It's so your voices, your numbers, they count, lobby, go to Capitol Hill, complain, and let us know what you're feeling. And if you want your college to do that for the kids, guess what? If enough parents sign a petition, guess what? They're going to create a financial literacy course in every campus around the U.S. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
What would you say? All right, this probably won't be for the kids, but what would you say to an adult who's like, I am terrified of investing? It scares the living daylight out of me to even hear the word investing. Because I've come across people like that.
Oh,
like,
yes.
Get away from me. I don't want to hear it. You know what I'm saying? How do we help those people overcome that? I know you got to be scared a little bit, but come on.
Embrace the uncomfortable.
Yeah, embrace it. And also, like Steve said, you got to get out of your comfort zone. So that was my first thing is embrace the uncomfortable. If you're doing something, rather it's your job, your business, once you get to that point where you're comfortable and you become complacent, then I feel like it's time for you to push. And that means you're not living to your highest capabilities, in my personal opinion, if you're comfortable the whole time. So there's maybe something you're supposed to be accomplishing that you're not going to. And I think there's nothing wrong if you are making comfortable money and you are a 9-to-5 person and you want to just stick to that and not invest and just save, then good. But also understand what that life might present to you. Understand that every issue that arises, how many vacations you can actually have, understand the limitations that you put on yourself when you don't invest. So if you're willing to understand the limitations that you put on yourself and you're willing to deal with those limitations, rather it's downsizing where you live because you can no longer afford it. Property, if you own property, your taxes might go up, right? So if your taxes are going up yearly, like even my house, I remember when I bought it, it was in 2000s, and now my property taxes are in 6,000s already, and that's in
in 5 years. You know, granted, that means the value of my house went up. But at that same point, you know, what if I wasn't able to afford $6,000 a year on just taxes alone, on property taxes? I have a friend, she lived in a property area that was at $7,000. Now it's in like $15,000 for taxes. So cost of living goes up. So as long as you're willing to understand that maybe because you don't want to invest and multiply your money that way, and you're making minimum investment, making minimum interest on your money, then also understand you might have to move from where you live to downsize to a smaller location, or even move out of the state. Are you willing to move away from the state that you know because you can't afford to stay there any longer? Like at the gentrification of Brooklyn, that is what's happening to a lot of people. They can't afford to stay in their own neighborhoods any longer, or even rent. So even if you didn't have like a rent stabilized location or home, then you're getting pushed out. And if something happens, like there was a few years back, this Jewish guy, one of the people out of the building, because it was rent stabilized, and he burnt down the whole building. What? So in the end of the day, you know, and that was like a major case. But in the end of the day, guess what? Those people, they did. Some, even, you know, while they're doing an investigation, whatever, a lot of those people had to move to like Pennsylvania because they couldn't afford to still live in New York City. So just think about the long-term game of if you don't invest. And the second thing I would say is, once again, invest what you're comfortable, I would say, losing, right? And then take that profit. So like, you know, some people are like, I'm not willing to lose more than $100, right? So then find something that you truly believe in and invest with that $100. Rather, it's something like, I teach the kids in the high schools all the time. Your Jordans cost on average $150. One share of Nike only costs about $85 as of a week or two ago. So that means for less than half of the Jordans that you would have had, now you have a share of the company, right? So maybe look at Snapchat. You know, it was down
now it's $14.
It's $14. It was I bought it at $5 and change, right? And now it's at $14, right? So when you think about things of this nature, then, you know, take $50. Buy something that is a physical commodity that you don't mind, if, you know, that you feel like is going to appreciate in value. And, you know, and it might not be a big investment, but at least you get started. And then maybe you could sell that and then take the profit and invest in something a little bit more, because now you're not investing necessarily your money. You're investing the profits of your money. Right? So I always say, start small. If you're afraid to jump right in, start small. $1,000, $500. If you know you spent $3,000 on food, lower your budget to $2,000 and take that extra $1,000 and invest it in something that might appreciate in value, not just something that you ate and then it's gone. You had an experience and it's gone. And a lot of people in our community, we do that. We spend money on experiences and we forget, like, what is the value of that experience? So like, we teach the kids Jordans on average cost $1 to $5 to make, right? And we're not telling you not to buy Jordans, but you just spent and invested in somebody else's dream. You spent $150 on something that only cost someone maybe $2 to make and manufacture. So if you can invest in somebody else's dream, why can't you invest in your own dream? So that's what I would tell adults, you know? You don't have to go hard, but do something.
What do you think of Robinhood, the app?
I think it's a cool app. It's a good start. You know, Stash, Robinhood, some of these don't charge you any fees for trading. And, you know, until you make a certain amount of profit, and then you have to, you know, expand. And that's a good way to start if you want to do stock market. I also do know, because I come from the stock market world and I did ETFs for foreign currency, I know a lot of people are like, the stock market's due to crash. Okay. So if you're afraid of the stock market crashing and you're afraid of Robinhood and things of that nature, then invest in something that you feel like real estate or something that you feel like is actually going to have longevity. But then don't forget, anything that you invest your money in, anything is a risk, but anything in life is a risk. You walk down the block and someone may hit you with a car, right? You know, even if you have like partial insurance. You know, some people don't even have insurance at all. And I'm like, for $20 to $30 a month, you can have insurance. And if, God forbid, anything happens to you, die, or you get hurt, then guess what? Your family and your kids would be at least set up enough to pay for the funeral, and the list continues. But people think in our community, like, oh, insurance is like $500 a month. I'm like, no, you can get partial insurance for like $200,000 for $20 a month. And guess what? $200,000, that's still leaving something for your child, better than leaving nothing. That in itself is an investment, right? So, you know, or
so let me ask you this. I've been wanting to ask you this, but what's more important, making money, spending money, or saving money?
I mean, I believe it's a balance of everything. That's for me,
nothing is more important.
So I have this trademark right now that I just trademarked my first slogan, and it's money is not my God, right? So if you go on my Instagram, you'll see me rocking this t-shirt hard. And if I wasn't at the UN today, I would have had my t-shirt on right now, right? And so money is not my God. So to me, making money will never necessarily be the biggest goal for me. And I also know that as much as I save, it's also important for me to spend wisely. And I don't want to not enjoy my life. So my values when I do spend, it's like vacation, right? It's experiences with my family, going out of the country, buying real estate overseas, things of that nature, things that I can say if I pass away, my child has a property here, there, or, those are the things that to me really impact. And I look at longevity wise.
So you said there's none more important than the other.
No, it's a balance. Life is a balance, right? You can't say money's not my God, right? So you can't buy my loyalty. I grind hard. I also know that although I was making six figures when I left the corporate world, I was able to leave it to do something that I was passionate about and go on to women believe that, you know what, if I tuck my chin in and play broke for a few years, that I'll reach my goals and make more than six figures. And, sure enough, because I believed in myself enough and because money was not my God, I was able to walk away from that. But then God was able to align me because, faith, grind, inspire, right? So my faith made me believe in myself and that he had my back. So I knew God had my back. I knew I was aligned and I knew that this was my next step. So because I trusted him and I was willing to do the grind and put in the work towards what I believed in, I was able to actually hit my goals, and now I'm able to inspire people. What was it? 3 weeks ago, I was in Atlanta speaking at BYOB. Shout out to Andrew and Pauliana. But Build Your Own Brand was in Atlanta. They happen yearly. And, there was like 2,250 people in attendance at BYOB. Wow. And I was privileged enough to be on a panel alongside other millionaires talking about how to become a millionaire. And now I'm able to be in a place to inspire people, but I had to take that jump out of that window. I had to believe that God would catch me and those wings would be there. And if I kept pushing and not fearing rejection, then that belief in myself and not fear of rejection, which in our community, that fear of rejection is real. It will cripple you. And I was able to inspire now. So that's really to me what it means to balance it all.
I'm listening to this and I'm watching you and I'm getting chills because I remember when we met. Shout out to our mutual friend Lawrence
Covington.
Yes, and I'm looking at you like, yo, this is amazing.
Yeah, and he knew me from the mouse that worked in the corporate world. I was like numbers and computers all day.
Yeah, he's like, I got my homegirl. She's amazing. She's great. She's really smart, and she's really good with numbers. You're gonna love her. And we've been friends ever since.
Oh my God, that was like 16 years ago or something?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Now, you have KidsWhoBank has an award ceremony, right?
Yes.
And you presented me an award.
Yes.
And so, so tell us about the award ceremony and tell us about tell us about that.
Why you gave Gene the award?
Okay, so I'll tell you right now. No, he deserved it. He earned it.
He's about to lose his job.
You know what happened? He just wants an award too. It's okay. So
doesn't know how you got it.
I'll tell you how he earned it. So the Kidpreneur Awards is what I call it, and the Kidpreneur is all about honoring youth entrepreneurs and philanthropists, and the adults creating ladders for them. Let's be honest. Gene has created ladders for so many youth between the scholarships that he's donated in the school systems, going to inner city areas in Brooklyn, places that people will be like, you're going to Brownsville, you're going to East New York. And Gene is like, yes, I am. And I'm rocking my watch because I love my people. And I'm going to show up and inspire these kids to be their best potential person.
Right.
And so that's why I honor Gene. But, furthermore, taking it a step further, we created it because the first year I went into 137 schools. And by the time I got to the 90th school, I realized that a lot of youth in our communities believe two things. One, that the rich people or affluent people who leave our neighborhoods, they don't pour back into the neighborhood. So they would say things like, I can't become an entrepreneur and I can't become rich because I'm from this neighborhood. And then the second thing is they would say things like, only kids who are making their goals happen are like kids with silver spoons, like Willow and Jaden Smith. They have like rich parents pouring into them already.
People.
Yeah, and I was like, that's not true. And I would mention all these kids. I was like, I know a little girl who made 100,000 selling tutus, or I know a kid who made 300,000 selling slime. And they'd be like, where are these people? I've never heard of them. And then they would like look at Black Girls Rock, which shout out to Beverly Bond for that.
Yes.
But Black Girls Rock, they would say when most of the kids that they saw being honored were kids that were technically already like celebrity children to them, already featured all the time in the news. So long story short, fast forward, what ended up happening for me was that I took that information and I was like, you know what? I want to create something where they could see the everyday kids. Some of them are celebrities and some of them are just children who worked at a store and raised up enough money bagging groceries to create and pour into their businesses. And then, so we've honored like the junior flip kids, 5 kids who do real estate who have made already $650,000 in profit in real estate in Maryland and DC. As I said, a 6-year-old who made 100,000 selling tutus. A 7-year-old who made his own YouTube comedy series and cartoon series called Rocket Ship Squid. And the list continues.
I saw that.
DJs Amira and Kayla, they get paid.
Yeah, I actually saw that.
Yeah.
That Rocket Ship Squid thing. I was like, wow.
And his kid is only like 7 years old and brilliant. And I just wanted to highlight that. And then I also wanted to highlight the adults like Jean and, Jay Alexander Martin, co-founder of FUBU, who we honored this year, and, Jane Carter and all these people who created a platform for our children to excel. Because honestly, it's important that although like even Jean was like, I don't know, like awards is, I don't do it for awards. And I'm like, I know you don't do it for the awards, but our kids need to see that we are doing these things for them because that's what they aspire to become now. Now they can turn around and be like, you know what? There was like the little kid, this little boy who's an aspiring boxer and he's a rapper and he wants to be an entrepreneur. And like he looks up to Jean and he's like, oh my God, like I can be a businessman and wear multiple hats, and we need to create these representations for our youth.
Definitely.
So actually
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you and your whole team.
It's a good look.
Thank you.
Now, how do you balance marriage and business and raising a little 4-year-old? Like, how does this work? Because we always ask the men this question.
Team no sleep.
Team no sleep?
Yeah. I sleep in the summertime, technically speaking. Throughout the year, I vacation. And I make sure the whole family comes. Even when I went to Australia, I made sure that him and his dad were there and they came to Australia with me. Even when I get booked gigs now, I'm like, okay, well, I call it the nanny budget, quote unquote, or the nanny budget, but basically like rather it's his father, or if he can't come, making sure that I have like my best friend come so that she can hold on the little man. Cause my son goes to every country, every state with me. I don't ever leave him behind. I don't, like both my parents have passed away. So I don't really have a parent to be like, can you watch my son? And I'm a hands-on mother. So as a hands-on mother, I left the corporate world so I can be a hands-on mom and raise my child. And I didn't want to sacrifice family or being a mom to be an entrepreneur and also pour into my community.
Nice.
So I just had to learn how to budget that all. And so it's Team No Sleep for a while.
Okay.
Now I'm starting to sleep again.
No sleep.
Yeah, so now I'm starting to sleep again. So I don't have bags right now because I'm sleeping again.
Yeah, because I'm like, you don't look like you don't.
No, you're actually,
man.
you're actually glowing.
Yeah,
I'm glowing maybe because of the energy of the room.
Yo, there's a lot of energy right here.
Yeah,
You guys don't feel it, but
let me tell you, so it's energy of the room that allows me to be Team No Sleep right now.
Yeah.
But and still not have bags. But honestly, I realized that what happened was as I was trying to balance all of this, I started sacrificing myself. I wasn't going to the gym as much. I gained weight, or like I was eating like at 10 o'clock at night when I would come home.
Whoa.
And or like now I'm in law school for cannabis law. So like then I was like, okay, I'm coming home extremely late. I'm exhausted. Then during the week, I still have to make sure I bring my son to something social and kid friendly so that he doesn't lose his social skills. And I got to a point that as of the last month, I started making self-love moments for myself. So rather it's a bubble bath 2 hours. I come home and I'm like, don't knock on the door. The lights are off. I light the candles for myself. And I do that. Or just making sure that dinner time, I try my best to be home for dinner time, even if I have to leave again. But even if I come home, have dinner with the family, and then leave again.
Oh, nice.
I'll make sure that I'm there at least, or I meal prep on Sunday so that I can cook something like a home cooked meal and we could all eat together. And then, we had that moment where it's no TV, no cell phones. I don't care what meeting or emails are coming in. I'm ignoring everything.
I like that.
But I had to learn that self-love moment, right?
I like the self-love moment.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to have some self-love.
I do that a lot of times.
You need it.
You need it.
Spa day, massages.
A spa day that's not, I don't tell anybody.
I don't have self-love days.
Okay, you need your skin looks like you do have it, but you need it.
Because he doesn't help his wife with laundry. He doesn't do manual labor. His wife would think he has self-love. Days, weeks.
Seriously.
Shout out to Toya.
Hi, Toya.
Seriously though, you have this award that I saw, and it was notable for Mother of the Year.
Yes, that's what I was about to bring up.
I'm sorry if I jumped.
No worries, that's fine.
That is awesome.
Thank you.
You were honored as Mother of the Year.
New York State Mother of the Year.
Not New York City.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is by the organization that actually created Mother's Day.
Yeah.
They've honored like Eleanor Roosevelt and all these prestigious women. And honestly, I'm blushing probably just speaking about it because I never would have imagined that I would have been a New York State Mother of the Year, right? I'm like,
so cool.
we're
sitting with the Mother of the Year.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm listening to that.
Yeah, it was a humbling and beautiful experience. They do the ceremony every year in DC. And it was like they had women representatives from every state. And then they allowed us to go to Capitol Hill and talk to the local senators and congressmen and people from New York State to discuss and lobby and discuss what we felt like were important causes. So of course I discussed financial literacy, and I felt like we needed to talk about that more. Let me tell you, just getting a pass where you had like Capitol Hill, you had like a full access pass to go on Capitol. That was the most amazing experience. And then even during being on the Senate floor or just being in that room alone amongst these people who are the lobbyists, who are the bill makers, who are the people who create our legacy, that was just an amazing experience in itself.
Wow, man.
I told you. And it's funny because I have a degree in child psychology, and people are always like, "You're so amazing with kids."
No, you're a very potent person. Your energy is like.
Thank you.
My circle is tight.
Nah, man, her energy is. I know you guys can't really feel it over the radio, but I'm telling you, Ja is definitely.
Thank you.
Yes. She's something else, man.
Something else.
Yes.
You know what? It's funny because when I met Gene, I would say back in the day, I was more like, I wouldn't say antisocial, but I was more antisocial. He would always be like, come to this event, come to that event. And I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm good. And
she would pop up and she would stay in the corner.
I was an introvert.
She was. No,
I became a people person.
No way.
She was.
I became a people person.
That's what I'm telling you. Like,
it's
I remember her
growth
at the 40-40 club, like in the corner, sitting
playing
down.
pool. And then the only time I got up, I can't remember the football player's name, but Jeffrey Pope.
Yeah.
What happened was Jeffrey Pope, this other bloke, and this tall, dark-skinned dude, like buff, whatever.
Cliff Lewis.
And then what happened is I'm there, like basically not saying anything, and they're like, "You're not gonna do anything." I'm like, "Yeah, I just want to play pool." And they're like, "You want to come to a party to play pool?" And they're like, "All right, let's play pool." And then like Gina's like, "You came to my party." He was like, "I'm just happy you came out because you always say no to everything." But I was like, "This is the launch of your ACA branding. There's no way in this world that I'm gonna miss the launch of your baby." So here we are at 40-40, and it was like, and then after that, I think it was like, I barely saw Gene again after that. And he'd be like, "I'm going to this event. I'm doing this. You want to come out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." Cause I was a corporate person. I was finance and numbers. Numbers don't lie. People do sometimes, right?
Yeah, true.
So, for me, I'm like, let's reconcile everything down to zero. And if I can't reconcile it, I don't need to be in that room, right?
Got you.
But it was funny, when I started KidsWhoBank, part of my apprehension in creating KidsWhoBank was the fact that I knew I had to be more social. And I would eventually have to be like on these podcasts.
Oh, you're not an introvert anymore.
No, definitely
not. No.
Now,
and you know what broke it? I'm going to tell you what broke it.
Yeah, tell me.
I had a friend of mine. He's an NFL player. He's won rings. And he made this comment to me. He was like, "Is your fear of being hurt by a person more important than you teaching these youth the knowledge that you have in your brain and making the change that you want to see in this universe. And that really was like, so he was like, so you could live in this box and you could try to find a person to be a beard to talk about Kids Who Bank, but no one's going to be as passionate about you like you are when it comes to financial literacy. No one's going to know the financial world the way that you do to really push this. And who's going to really love and pour love into those children the way you could? And that's what really forced me to come out of my box.
I understand that.
And then I had people like Gene and like I was mentioning Chris, and I called them and I was like, yo, Chris, you're such a social person. How do you do it? He's like, one person at a time.
Facts.
Right? He's like, one person at a time. He was like, it's eye contact. It's creating a blast email. And I remember Chris, because I was like, how do you email everybody? You always make us all feel personable. He was like, I have an email group for the Jewish people. I have an email group for the Christians, for Christmas, for the Kwanzaa people. He's like, and then I put everybody in the BCC line and I send out one blast, happy Kwanzaa and one blast, happy blah, 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 blah. And he was like, and they all feel like it's personal touch, but really it's just about building those connections. And I remember Gene was like, thank you cards go far too, Jatali. Have a meeting, send a thank you card. And I never forgot these things. Wow. Yeah, because I'm a learner. I like to learn, right? This is how we grow. So I would have these amazing friends and who would say these things to me, and I'm like,
That's a good business tip for the week.
Yeah.
That is a
send out a thank you card. Yes, send out those emails, build those relationships.
Yeah, that's a good business tip, Gene.
Yeah. And then even my son's father, he got me this book called The Credit Secrets Bible. When I first came to this country, I barely knew about credit. And like within, I would say 2.5 years, I was able to get my credit to 750, and now it's in the 800s. And that came from a book. That was a gift.
Really?
So I always love the men in my life because I feel like the men uplift me. They pour into me.
The Credit
Secrets Bible.
The Credit Secrets Bible.
Yes, it's a black and gold book. It's called the Credit Secrets Bible.
Don't leave home without it.
And let me tell you, years later, the templates and the letters in that thing on that book are still relevant till this day. Because the game doesn't change. It's just who you talk to most of the time.
Different people.
Exactly.
I got you.
Man.
So go ahead.
One last question. So the show's called Faith, Grind, Inspire, right? Which one of those words resonate with you?
Faith.
Why?
Because I'm coming from a background where my stepmother, who was my mother figure growing up, she was very irresponsible with money. And I remember that she was a gambler. She would spend her money on going to the casinos because she thought that if she got $200, she could multiply it and then she would lose everything. And she lived living one day Bay Ridge, 1 minute Brownsville. Next minute she was living in Park Slope. Then she lived in East New York. And she lived check to check, right? Budget to budget, borrow to borrow. And my dad was more affluent. And I felt like, looking at my story, if I followed in her footsteps, my story would have been different, right? And I took that lesson, I took her knowledge and the negatives that I saw her going through, and I pushed forward to learn about financial literacy. And it's interesting because I started at the age of 8 to learn about as much as I can. By the time I was 20, my dad passed away. And when my dad passed away when I was 20, I remember thinking he always made a comment I was going to wait till you're 18 to teach you this. But if I had waited till I was 18, then I would have only got 2 years of his knowledge. And that was God who knew this is what's going to happen. This is your story. And every time I'm about to do something, I pray on it. And if I don't get that green light from him, I don't push forward.
I got you.
Even people, in the Bible, it says in Genesis, it talks about he gave us the stars as signs, right? It's not just to seasons, but it's also signs. And when you look at signs, bringing it back to the Bible, I look at numbers. I look at your horoscope. Before I do business with you, I'm like, what sign are you? Right? I'm like, maybe God is telling me I shouldn't align with you. Maybe I can't handle your personality.
Yeah.
And it's okay for me to know that about myself and be like, this is a deal I'm going to have to pass up on.
Yeah.
But then once again, it goes back to praying, and anything I do, if it doesn't align, and if he's not whispering in my ear, this is your next step, I don't do it. I don't allow anything to take me off of the path of alignment. And even though sometimes some deals are interesting, and I'm like there was this college I was like, oh, we would like you to come out and do X, Y, and Z, but I looked at the schedule, I'm like, this doesn't go with my schedule. This is not where God wants me to be. I need to be where he wants me to go.
Gotcha.
So everything with me is faith. Even my friendships are faith.
Gotcha.
If Gene was not a God-fearing man, we wouldn't have been friends.
I got you.
You know what I mean?
Makes sense.
And I'm not saying I'm not friends with people who are atheistic, but at that same point, I know what box to put you in. And there is a box. Unfortunately, some people are like, oh, you put people in a box? I'm like, yeah, because if you don't have a certain faith that we can maybe connect on, then what are your morals? Where are your standards, right? And then I have to watch myself and protect my energy, because some people are emotional vampires, right? So, and physical vampires, monetary vampires, and I have to protect myself. But once again, God aligns you right?
Yeah,
not that all Christians are necessarily good, but it's a starting base for me.
Yeah.
So
the foundation is there.
Foundation is there. So everything with me is faith.
Gotcha.
I walk in faith.
10-4. That's Mother of the Year speaking. Okay.
Speaking. Like,
Thank you.
All right. 2019.
Where can people find you?
KidsWhoBank at KidsWhoBank, or you could do info at kidswhobank.com. Or kidswhobank.com or .org, whichever you guys remember. Or my personal page, Brilliant Minds Unite, where, I push the money is not my God t-shirts. And that's basically where you can find me.
I love it.
Like it. Love it.
Thank you. You guys are amazing.
We're going to keep it.
And Gene, I'm so proud of you. Like
thank
this
you so
view,
much.
I'm pulling up to like Penn Station, Madison Square Garden, and I'm like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I've seen you from like the beginning where like, I'm good at this. I have good aesthetics, and I'm just so proud of you too.
I was telling Patrick today, I was like, I didn't get this far by caring about people's opinions. Like,
true.
And you hear it, but you just, because what happens with the subconscious mind is you take that opinion and it becomes a seed in your mind, and
your reality.
And then it starts growing doubt. It starts growing fear. It starts growing like, I really can't do this. And you take it, okay. And then you just keep going your direction, because Steve Jobs didn't get where he is.
No.
Bezos didn't get where he is. Jay-Z didn't get. They told Jay-Z he couldn't rap.
You gotta love it.
You know what I'm saying?
And now he's the first billionaire rapper?
Yeah. So so I love what you're doing.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on with me and Jeff. And shout out to our producers, Tim.
Thank you,
Jamie,
Tim. Jamie.
Brianna. Bree. And you can catch us every Wednesday on the Faith Grind Inspire podcast on OG Podcast Network.
Awesome.
Live in Madison Square Garden.
There's no doubt.
I'm looking at this view.
We're not in the basement.
This is not a
in the basement.
Honestly, I might be apprehensive if it was in the basement.
We're MSG. The deal is real. The deal is real.
Let me tell you, Gene, you put in that work, and it shows, and the view is amazing.
Thank you.
Yes.
So you can catch us every week. And thank you guys. Thank you for our Spotify, our YouTube. I forgot, somebody hit me up on Instagram and they said, don't forget to shout out the Instagram for your fans too.
Oh, yes.
So shout out to my Instagram fans,
Facts.
and, Facebook fans.
I don't have any.
Yeah, he's not.
Let me tell you, you got to get Instagram. I must have gotten at least 100 schools off of Instagram. Like, we're at 15,000 followers.
He's not.
And let me tell you something. Those followers come through because they're like, this is a superintendent. Go talk to him.
Yeah, exactly.
And so those contacts, they come through. It makes you money.
Oh my goodness, I am not on Instagram.
He's not on anything.
All right, we're gonna have to change that for you.
Yeah.
About to fish. What's that? Catfish? I'm gonna catfish you. Create a page for you.
All right, so we're out of here. Business tip of the day: build a relationship.
Yes.
Listen to the Mother of the Year.
Yes.
Awesome.
Sponsored by KidsWhoBank.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. That was brought to you. So I'll talk to you guys later. God bless and keep grinding. Peace.
Awesome.